This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, if you're the parent of a school-age child, school-age children, if you're a teacher, if you're an administrator, if you're a community member, you're probably well aware that Alberta's teachers have, they voted overwhelmingly in favor of strike action just a short time ago, a number of days ago. Welcome to the show, everybody. Jesperson here with Hicks. In just a moment, Alberta Teachers Association President Jason Schilling will join us, but for no reason other than, basic working conditions, fair pay, classroom sizes bursting at the seams. Alberta's teachers have sent notice to the provincial government that despite mediation efforts, they're prepared to hit the picket line to get what they say they need to provide the quality of education that students in Alberta deserve. One of Canada's highest earning and most prosperous provinces. As you know, if you're a regular listener or viewer of this program, you know that Alberta spends the least per capita on its students, K to 12. The Education Minister, Dimitrios Nikolaitis, joining us just a few episodes ago, talking about that, talking about test results, talking about historic spending on education. But for whatever reason, and we're about to hear from the other side, it's not resonating. It's not leading to a deal. So what does this mean for families that are looking at, for high school age students, final exams, for junior high, for elementary school students near the end of school, a summer vacation that could be interrupted or, let's say, hastened with a strike? What does this mean for the fall? What does this mean for the thousands and thousands of teachers in Alberta that have been fighting for a contract for more than a year? We'll get into it in this episode of the show. Plus, the President of the United States departing the G7 early before many of the member nations had an opportunity to go one-on-one with President Trump. He says he's heading back to take care of an urgent situation, that conflict, Israel, Iran flaring up, the United States working toward a ceasefire. But what does this mean for Canada? What does it mean for the G7 member nations? Some takeaways following Trump's brief visit to Kananaskis, and we'll get into that in this episode of the show. Plus, if you're watching us on YouTube or on the live stream presented by California Closets, you can see that I'm repping the Oilers colors, the logo. It's a big day, and Infamous and I, of course, will tee up a do-or-die Game 6. The Edmonton Oilers down in Sunrise, Florida, trying to force a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final. The conversation we're having today is made possible with the presenting sponsorship of our friends at We Know Training. You can find them online at wkt.ca. Led by subject matter experts and lifelong learners, We Know Training brings a human touch to tech-powered education. They don't just build learning platforms. They help people and organizations just like yours level up. And in industries where compliance is critical, that makes all the difference. Now, here's the deal. We Know Training doesn't do one size fits all. They build tailored, fully managed training storefronts that are secure with digital credentials and e-commerce so organizations can focus on what they really need to focus on. And that's what truly matters, training that works and credentials that stick. You can learn more on how We Know Training is developing everything you need for training and credentialing by checking them out online at wkt.ca. As we say hello to the president of the Alberta Teachers Association, Jason Schilling. Welcome back. It's been a while since you were on the show, but it seems like we're going to be seeing, I would imagine, some recurring themes in our conversation today.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me back. Yes, I imagine that we will hit on some things we've talked about before.
Yeah, for context, your members, the teachers across the province, how many teachers are we talking about, by the way?
51,000.
51,000. Size of a mid-sized city in the province, 51,000 educators. A while ago, a 99.5% yay on a vote which was an authorization to strike, and then more recently, a strike vote 95%. Those numbers don't lie. That's overwhelming support for walking out.
Well, it's a huge support for the association and the things that teachers want to see within a collective agreement. So our strike authorization process is a step that we do internally to make sure that our members have conviction about moving forward. That was 99% in favor of moving forward with the strike vote, which happened last week, and 95% of teachers said that they are in favor of a strike if they need to in order to reach a negotiated settlement. Ideally, we'd like to negotiate that and come to a conclusion that way, but teachers are willing to take that extra step because they've had enough with trying to carry a limping education system that's in crisis on their backs.
Okay, so I know that there's going to be moms and dads and grandparents that are going to be listening to this episode. The podcast is going in the vehicle as they're waiting in line for school pickup, and the one thing that they want to know is the strike going to happen before the school year ends? If I know anything about negotiation, you're not going to tell us, you're not going to show us those cards, but this is something that could happen as we speak within the next 72 hours.
Well, you have to give 72 hours notice in order to do any kind of job action. When you get a strike vote, you have that strike vote in your pocket for 120 days. So there's opportunities there for negotiations during this time. But if teachers feel the need to give 72 hours notice, then they will.
How does a strike vote like what we've seen here, nearly 100% of your members, how does that resonate, or how does that impact negotiations? Have you heard from the province since the vote results were made public? It's been splashed all over the news.
It's been all over the news, and I've heard the minister make some comments about that. But we don't bargain in the public, so we'll have bargaining dates here in June. We've got some more at the end of August if needed, and we'll just see how that plays out.
Okay, so a strike is possible before the end of the school year, but not guaranteed.
Well, anything's possible, right? You just have to give 72 hours notice to do that. And as you said, council, the governing body of the ATA, will make those decisions about strategic next steps.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Like when it comes down to it, you say you're not going to negotiate in public, but people are going to want to know, what's this all about? Is this about more than money?
Well, of course. I mean, and teachers want fair pay. We've only had a 6% raise in the last 12 years, and everything has gone up in those 12 years. The cost of living, the cost of insurance, utilities. If you're driving in your car right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But teachers are also talking about the fact that their class sizes are the largest that they've ever seen. We just did a survey with our membership. 69% said their class sizes are larger than last year. 90% of the members say that the complexity of the students in their classrooms are more complex than last year. But 58% will indicate that the supports for those kids have gone down. So teachers don't have the tools that they need in order to meet the needs of their students, and that has a lot to do with it.
Why do class sizes matter? I feel like I know the answer, but can you put it in plain language, like the difference between a class? What's ideal, like 22, 23, something like that?
When we were on strike in 2002, we got the Alberta Commission on Learning gave us some guidelines. And so kindergarten, or K to 3 was 17. 4 to 6 was about 21. When you get into junior high school, it would be about 25, 27. Now, I've taught classes of 25, but I've also taught classes of 42. And I'll tell you, my classes of 42, it is more difficult for me to give those students the one-on-one time that they deserve. It's more difficult for me to give them feedback on their homework. I teach high school English, so that takes a while. And I would have days where I would feel like I didn't talk to certain students because I just didn't have the time. And then you add in the complex nature of our students without the supports, learning special needs, English language learners, kids who are coming in with trauma. Those are factors on there that teachers are struggling to meet their needs day in and day out, and they're burning out and leaving the profession. Are
you actually seeing that? Like, do you have numbers, or do you have maybe even anecdotes that would help people understand maybe the issues that you're having, that the association is having with retention?
Retention and recruitment and retention issues are countrywide. We're seeing these across Canada. But just ask a teacher right now how easy it is to get a substitute teacher. Substitute teachers aren't around anymore for the most part. And you come to some areas where you're sick, you call for a sub, they don't come in, the rest of the school then scrambles then to cover off the classes. Classes get divided. You might get an extra 10 kids. You might get classes doubled up, and then all of a sudden you have 52 kids. And so we're starting to see issues across this province. There were some places last year where they advertised for a teacher and didn't get one all year long. And so those kids were in a class that was probably double the size that it needed to be.
So when we're talking, like how many classrooms would you say on average, maybe you have this data, are adhering to those recommendations that you gleaned the last time this came around, 17 and 21 and 25? How many of those classrooms would you say fit into those recommended parameters?
I wouldn't have those exact numbers because...
Is it 10%? Is it 50?
Well, the government stopped collecting class size data in 2019. So there's no data out there that actually indicates where the class sizes are in this province. So, don't collect the data. Don't worry about the class size. Cut the funding for it as well, because funding is the real big part of this conversation that we need to have. And collect the data so that we know. But I'll tell you right now, my colleagues are saying that 40 is the new 30 when it comes to class size. I've talked to teachers who have kids in, there's a couple of teachers out there who are dealing with class sizes in the 50s.
50s?
Yeah.
You would imagine your association's collecting numbers, though, from members. Are members submitting? I mean, you got to have, that's ammunition to me in negotiations. You must have an idea.
Well, we've got part of these surveys that we do every year with our members. We call them pulse surveys. We've talked about them before. We do collect data from them in terms of the class size, but that's where we're seeing that 40 is the new 30, that we're seeing grades 4 to 6 really have exploded in terms of class numbers. We're seeing a lot of those classes that are in the high 20s or their low 30s when they're supposed to be 21.
What are parents telling you?
Well, parents are frustrated as well because they know that their students are coming to school, their kids are coming to school. Teachers want to do what's best for them, but the resources aren't there, especially parents who have students with special needs. You've seen a cut of funding towards special needs programming across the province. We used to have, it's called PUF funding, and these are for the littlest of our students who have really high needs in order to give them intensive one-on-one support, because we know kids who do well in K-3, if you give them lots of support, they will not need that support when they get into the later grades. So we need, I know that parents are frustrated by the whole process as well.
We were talking to Alberta's Education Minister, Dimitrios Nikolaitis, back on June 5th. Real Talkers can check that interview out on our YouTube archives, wherever you get your podcasts. And he was talking a lot, and he's not wrong about the fact that Alberta is spending a record amount or making a record investment in education this year, nearly $10 billion under a new funding formula. Now, I know that you're going to tell me that enrollment is up and population is up and all those types of things, but what would you counter to the minister's argument?
Well, the funding formula change that they're doing, we've not seen it in action yet. It's new. But the funding formula that was there before funded kids over the course of 3 years. So a district like Edmonton Public might get 5,000 new kids, but they're only getting funding for about 1,000 of them. This new funding formula, I saw the board chair say in an article that if they got 3,000 new kids, they'd only get funding for 1,000. So we'll have to see if this funding formula is actually going to make a difference in terms of getting support in classrooms for kids. This budget is, as you said at the top, we're the least funded school jurisdiction in all of Canada. We have been for a decade. That's why we're in this situation. This chronic underfunding of public education in the province has led to this situation. So yeah, the budget was 4.5%, record spending. We have a record amount of students in our classrooms, and hiring teachers hasn't kept pace with the number of students that we have. So we needed to see 13.5% just to be the Canadian average in budget 2025. We got 4.5%.
Is it tougher to hire teachers in Alberta than across the country? You say that there's challenges on recruitment and retention from coast to coast, but is it tougher in Alberta, or is there still the Alberta advantage that people talk about in the sense that real estate's a little bit more affordable, cost of living's a little bit more affordable, et cetera?
Well, I think you go across the country, and I just met with my counterparts from the national presidents 2 weeks ago in Saskatoon. This issue is across the country, and it's variety, right? Class sizes, complexities, wages are part of the factor as well. You talk to my colleagues in Ontario, they'll say, we don't necessarily have a teacher shortage problem, we just have a shortage of people who want to work in schools right now because the working conditions are not ideal.
Tracy's watching us in our live chat powered by Park Power, says my teacher hubby needed a sub last week and couldn't get one, had to actually cancel his medical appointment. Kyle's watching and says all the teachers that I'm talking to, he says they say this is not about money. They say it's not about class sizes. He says that may be part of it, but it's mostly a jab at the UCP by the NDP donating union. How much of this is the teachers union and this conservative government butting heads?
Well, we've been at odds for a while. I mean, it's a respect issue as well. And I'll just correct something about that comment. We are nonpartisan as an association. We don't donate money to political parties or candidates. We know that when, depending on who forms government, we need to work with whoever forms government. And so we're not partisan in that nature. But there's definitely been a level of disrespect felt by my members. They've been talking for years about the fact that we see public education in a crisis situation, but feel like the government's not listening to what teachers need in order to meet kids' needs.
How does that disrespect manifest itself? Like, give us an idea of what that relationship's like. Are there open channels of communication? I mean, obviously there's been mediation. You've been talking to them.
Well, I meet regularly with the minister to share the concerns of my members, but I don't see action on that. And a really good example of this would be these K-3 literacy and numeracy assessments. Our members have told us, and we've relayed this to government time and time again, that these assessments are not serving students. They're age and grade inappropriate. They're causing kids to cry at school. They're frustrating. They're taking a bunch of time away from teaching time in schools. But government is still pushing forward with them, even though the membership, who are experts in education, they've got degrees in pedagogy, and they're saying these tests aren't working, but government's still moving ahead with them. And that's a little bit of a disrespect that my members will feel.
What do you mean they're not age appropriate?
So, for instance, the kindergarten exams that they give on literacy and numeracy, we've never tested kindergarten kids before. We're the only jurisdiction in Canada that is doing it. They're asking students in the numeracy exam to put the number 7 on a number line. They don't teach number lines till grade 2. So why are you asking a kid in kindergarten a concept that's not taught till grade 2?
What would be the benefit of testing kids in kindergarten?
Well, if you want to test students, and teachers will know this just from working with them. I've taught over 25 years. I can tell when a student is struggling, where their weaknesses are and where their strengths are. I don't necessarily need standardized tests to tell me that. Teachers will use a diagnostic exam to figure out what students might need, but they also need a choice on which test works for them, not just a blanket covering test for every kid in the province.
Don't you have to have kind of consistent standards province-wide for that kind of stuff?
There are standards already out there, and certain diagnostic exams will give you those standards, and that also comes from teachers working with kids in school.
Okay. The PISA tests are what a lot of people talk about, PISA test results. The minister referenced it on the 5th of June. People can check out that interview. Had a lot of teachers in the chat reaching out and after in our email to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Well, and a lot of them were saying, and one of them in particular made a compelling point that said PISA test results, these are 15-year-old students, isn't it?
Yep, the grade 10 students.
This is the program for international student assessment. This is like kind of a global testing standard, is that right?
Yeah, it's a standard that's used across by the OECD.
Okay, so we can get a sense of how our students, how our high school students are stacking up against those in like the United States and Sweden and Britain and the like, is that right? So Minister says, well, our PISA results show that Alberta students are excelling. I'm paraphrasing his comments. Teachers are reaching out to say, number one, a student tested at 15 is exhibiting knowledge and investment in their education that started when they were 5 or 6. So, so that's 10 years ago that you're talking about now. And others are saying, well, it's not necessarily indicative of current conditions. How relevant are these PISA results that the government's crowing about?
Well, you have to remember that PISA results are a snapshot of a student's ability that day at that time. It is built on the knowledge that they have into those moments, but any kind of standardized test is only capturing what a student knows in that moment. And it's only capturing one really small part of the curriculum. And so Alberta students do well on these exams, but they do well because teachers are teaching them the curriculum in a way that they're being successful. But teachers are also saying we don't have the tools right now to ensure that students are successful. And there's a lot of concern because PISA tests tend to be a lot on math, science, or reading. And there's a lot of problems with the K-6 math curriculum right now. So I'd be interested to see just where PISA results go down the road.
Cliff in our live chat says we also have to look at the dramatic increase in the number of, he says, unexpected students or students who came to Alberta over a very short amount of time. I would imagine he's talking about an influx in immigration. Says it takes time to build schools and it takes even more time to hire staff. How is the province doing in your assessment on getting schools built? We see announcements all the time from different governments, and maybe folks like me do a poor job of updating or following up on shovels in the ground and completion dates, but do you get the sense that the province is on track to keep up with with this Alberta's Calling campaign and everything else?
Well, we'll have to see if the actual announcement turns into buildings. They are moving forward with some of them, but last September, the Premier announced $8.6 billion towards building schools across the province. Well, we noted through that announcement, there's no announcement about who's going to work in those buildings, because we need to have pre-service programs that are going to have teachers working in the system. But we know that teachers are leaving the system right now because of working conditions. And a new school is 4 or 5 years down the road. We need help and assistance and tangible solutions to the issues right now, not 4 or 5 years down the road.
Does the ATA do like the equivalent of like exit interviews? Like when teachers are leaving, do you have an opportunity, or one of your colleagues have an opportunity to talk to them about exactly why, what may keep them there, et cetera?
Actually, we do a lot of we do research with beginning teachers, so those who are coming into the system just after university. We call it our Beginning Teachers Survey. I know it's a stunning title, but 50% of those teachers are leaving within the first 5 years. So we do exit interviews.
So did you say 50%?
Yeah, 50%. Half are leaving because of a variety of things. They're taking jobs in other professions. They're leaving the province. Some are starting their families, and so they're going on leave. And some are just leaving because it's not what they thought it would be. They don't have the supports. We need new young teachers in the system in order to grow the profession. But we also do exit interviews with some of our members through these surveys that we do to see why are they leaving. A lot of it is the working conditions that, they're towards the end of retirement. They can retire. Maybe they've got 1 or 2 years left in their career that they wanted to do, but based on the conditions, they're leaving now. And we also know some of our members are leaving the profession altogether, or they're leaving the province to go teach in another jurisdiction.
Do you have data on how many teachers would be leaving Alberta to remain in Canada and teach in other provinces or territories?
Just on this survey that we did, it's a percentage. It's not a hard number, but it's about 3% of our members.
Of total members?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. Quick story time. Stick with me. In a couple of days from now, we'll host our Real Talk Golf Classic.
Mm-hmm.
This is in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship, which provides financial supports for post-secondary students that have lost a parent to cancer. People can apply for that scholarship, by the way, on our website, ryanjesperson.com. The very first recipient of that scholarship is a soon-to-be nurse by the name of Hani Bombay-Wala. And she told us the story of when her parent was in hospital with cancer, the strains and stresses that she saw on the staff there, and the impact that had on her family and other families is what drew her into healthcare. She wanted to be part of the solution. Do you see the same thing with students, potential teachers, like 16, 17, 18-year-olds that see some of the stress and strife in the education system and want to be part of the solution? Or do you see the opposite, that it chases away talent that could be potentially teaching in classrooms moving forward?
I've heard both stories of that, of teachers, young students who are inspired to go into education because they want to help. I became a teacher because I want to help students become the best people that they can be. I love working with students. I want to help them, but you have what we call moral distress, or there's a compassion fatigue that comes from working really hard all day long without the tools that you need to make sure that kids are successful, and at the end of the day just feeling like you've done a terrible job. I felt that way every day when I had a class of 42. I didn't feel like I was meeting the needs of my students and that they were suffering for the fact that I didn't have the resources available to help them. But I've also talked to, just another teacher the other day, and she was at their high school graduations are coming up. She has 5 students that are going into education. That's their plan, is to become teachers. And her goal is to make sure that those 5 stick around after 5 years, that they're still working in the profession.
And our live chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, Ken Kay, says this government is always talking about funding increases, but unfortunately funding increases just don't match growth. They don't match inflation. And effectively, it's a reduction in funding. Tony says, good grief. UCP supporters that continue to bash unions. We're seeing some union bashing in the chat. I'm sure you're no stranger to that.
I'm no stranger to union bashing.
The way that the public dialogue often works says, can't they come up with a reasonable argument if bashing is the only tool that they have in their toolkit, says Tony, who's frustrated with that. teachers do seem to be, and I would also count myself among them, as members of the media, professionals, healthcare workers. There's kind of this group that is, I think, experiencing, number one, an undeniable loss of trust in the public. Polling talks about that, but also I think that many teachers are telling us at an individual level that they're feeling villainized, that they're feeling targeted. Is that a consensus feeling among your membership?
Well, when we do our surveys with our members, there's a big amount of pessimism amongst them because they feel, they're a scapegoat for some of society's ills when they don't have the tools that they need to do their job. Like I look at other professions and think, well, wouldn't it be interesting to hear what other professions have to say if they didn't have the things that they needed to do the work? If you didn't have microphones here, how would you do the show? If you didn't have the certain tools that you needed in order to do the jobs that you're expected to do? And there's a lot of frustration with that. And then if teachers say something about, well, we need these things, then you hear the standard sort of pushback of, oh, you get 2 months off every summer, or you get this and you get that. And
what do you say to people when they say that? That's probably the most common one that I hear.
Yeah. Well, a lot of teachers work in the summer. There's summer school. There's a lot of PD that happens in the summer. That's when your vacation time is. I always say that teachers work 10 months on a 12-month contract, and so I just push back on it just because I know how hard my colleagues are working. They're working about 60 hours a week, and they're doing extra things on top of that, extracurricular things on top of that. And the summer months is just time when they get it off, and they're actually technically not even on contract during those times. So
Our teachers are not paid in the summer, is that right?
well, they're paid. You get paid for your 10 months over 12.
Okay, I see. Yeah, not that I'm thinking that it's relevant. I'm just curious. I'm not always sure how it works, and I think people like the inside look.
Well, there's some jurisdictions they used to pay you all out at the end of June, and so you get your summer, your August and your July check in at the end of June, but then you get paid again until the end of September.
Yeah,
so,
that'd be bad news for a guy like me.
I want to struggle. Yeah.
Well, and I want to ask you about in a second. If you're just joining us on the live stream, Jason Schilling, our guest, president of the Alberta Teachers Association. The nurses got a pretty decent deal. It's all relative, but I think a pretty decent deal based on what people thought that they might get. I think a lot of people were anticipating the government holding a hard line at 0% or a minuscule increase, and that's not what happened. And I'm curious to know your take on how you think that stacks up, whether or not that works for you or against you. More in just a quick second with Jason Schilling. This conversation is happening with the support of agencies and organizations, companies that we're proud to partner with. And when we're talking about kids, when we're talking about doing what's best for young people, how do we not put UCAN Youth Services in the spotlight? They're doing incredible work with young adults, helping them find work opportunities, getting on track, these 18 to 24-year-olds. But I want to talk to you about the relentless outreach workers. These are UCAN team members that are working with 12 to 17-year-olds that are finding themselves in police custody, in front of judges on a regular basis. These are the most at-risk young people in the metro region, without a doubt. And UCAN's relentless outreach workers are doing everything they can to reach out to these young people, build relationships, and empower them in making positive, healthy, and life-changing decisions. The return on this investment is incredible. We're going to be talking to you a little bit more about that. Real Talker shining a light on this with a feature Real Talk Roundtable in the weeks to come. But right now, if you feel compelled, if this is a sign and you'd like to learn more about what UCAN is doing, you can check them out on their website, ucan.ca, including an opportunity to make a donation if you feel led. Again, support our youth at ucan.ca. We talk a lot about Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, and how proud we are to partner with them. Grateful to have them powering our live chat, the most engaged live chat in the country. You know, one of the big things we love about Park Power is they share their profits with nonprofits. How cool is that? This is a small business serving the province of Alberta that's doing everything it can to lift up those agencies that are making an impact in our own communities. If you go to their website, parkpower.ca/realtalk, you can find some exclusive offers for the Real Talk community, including some bundling opportunities. You want to bring your internet, electricity, and natural gas business over to Park Power? They've got a way you can save $150 off your first bill. That's the promo code REALTALK, by the way, at sign up. Find out all the details. They got the lowest fixed rate for electricity in Alberta, by the way. The lowest, bar none, at parkpower.ca/realtalk. And for those of you that, well, this week you're resolving to get out of that rut. You're underemployed, maybe you're unemployed, or maybe you are unhappily employed. The team at Kubi Renewable Energy is hiring up, bar none, Canada's fastest growing solar installer. And there's a lot of reasons to take your career over to Kubi. They're powered by experts, by quality, by simplicity, by sustainability, but most importantly, they're powered by people. You can check out the careers link for Solar by Kubi by visiting their website. That's kubi.ca. Jason Schilling, our guest. Alberta's nurses, I think probably, and maybe folks, thousands of folks in hospitals and care centers across the province breathed a sigh of relief when there was some stability as this government reached a deal with Alberta's nurses, at least for the next little while, labor peace on that front. As soon as that deal was struck, everybody started going, next up is the teachers. Everybody started looking at the teachers deal. Those are the two big ones. Not to say there aren't more, but those are the two contracts, the collective bargaining, that everybody's paying attention to. What precedent does the nurses deal set for the teachers? Is it relevant? Is it not? Is it apples? Is it oranges?
Well, it's definitely apples and oranges, and I'm happy for nurses be able to get a collective agreement. I mean, ultimately, that's what you want, is a negotiated settlement. People don't want to go on strike. They don't want to take these steps that disrupt the system or cause inconvenience to people, but they're willing to do so if they need to move the needle in the direction that serves their members. So glad that the nurses got the deal. It does help when you see other unions and other sectors settle for deals, because it helps set a precedence as you're moving forward in conversations.
An amazing comment from Joseph in our live chat. Both you and I are far too young to remember I Love Lucy, Jason. Far too young. But Joseph says, like Lucy and Vivian at the cookie factory. Everybody can remember the scene. He says teachers are experiencing doing more with less, and the government is funding a larger conveyor belt, which is a pretty good way to put it. So at the end of the day, you look at this and folks are going to say, this doesn't look good. I don't have a good feeling about this. You're talking about, you didn't say the word demoralized, but you talk about issues with the morale of teachers across the province. Where does this go?
Well, hopefully that we can get a negotiated settlement that moves us forward. But we also have to have real conversations about the funding model within this province and how much or how little we fund our students in Alberta compared to the rest of Canada. I mean, we were talking about budget 2025. You have a 4.5% increase to public education. We gave a 13.5% increase to private education. So there's equity issues there as well. And we're not going to get out of this crisis that we're in public education by ignoring the facts. And sometimes that's what it feels like government is doing.
Do you have a good sense of who's spending the most on education funding here? I'm taking a look at some numbers, and I think it looks to me like the closest year I can get is 2023. But is there a province that's really doing it well?
Well, Quebec is spending more. Well, actually, every province right now is spending more when it comes to students. We're the least we have been for the longest time. I think Saskatchewan is the next lowest, but you have to go out east in order to see the funding that's there per student.
Okay, it's relatively remarkable, and I said numbers from the 23 school year, which is, I mean, take it for what it's worth. But in that year, the national average 13,692 per student. Let's call it 13.7. Alberta's spending 11,464. Call it 11.5. So a pretty significant portion. You're talking about 10-15% below the national average.
Definitely, and that's why we needed to see a 13.5% increase in budget 2025 just to be at the Canadian average.
Is the funding for, this is always interesting when you have choice in education. Parents with students in private schools, charter schools, etc., can make a compelling argument that they pay taxes. It's fair that their taxes, at least in part, are going to go to the school where their child is attending. And Alberta has the highest percentage. Is it still 70%?
70%.
70% of the education tax that you pay through your property taxes can be directed toward the school of your choice, correct?
Well, we fund private schools at 70%, and that's an outlier in Canada.
Some of them are zero.
Some are zero, some are about 20%, some are 50%, but we fund them at 70%. So you just noted the number 11.5 on average that we would spend on a student in public education. A private school like Weber can spend $30,000 per student per year. And so that's a remarkable difference between that. And we as an association have policy about private schools. We no issue with private schools, but public dollars should not be going to fund private education in this province. The announcement for schools last fall, for the first time ever, we're spending public dollars on building private schools. And that money that we're collecting from taxes for public education should be going to public education.
Do you get the sense that the public's on your side on this one?
Well, there's going to be, I'm sure there's some in the chat there that are not, but we have a lot of support, I think, out there because people recognize that public education in this province is a great equalizer. Everybody has opportunity when they go to a public school, and public schools can't turn kids away. So they need the funding in order to make those students successful. We need to make sure that we have the resources available for these students, that we have the speech pathologists working in schools with our youngest kids, that we have the resources that the teachers need in order for kids to be successful, like EAs, more teachers.
Dubious says the strike, people are talking about it like it's a foregone conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe it's a foregone conclusion?
We'll have to see.
Yeah, you're not going to give me anything in this interview. I keep trying. Do I get credit? I keep circling back, but
if I had a rubric, you would be scoring well on the attempts.
Thank you.
If you wanted to know how teachers feel, or how our chat feels, Jason, we put up a poll on YouTube. Do teachers in Alberta deserve a raise? 83% of the chat agrees you guys should get more money. So.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, thanks for putting that up, Johnny. So a raise. Hey, are you able to say, like, here's what a starting teacher makes in Alberta, or does it depend on like the district they're in and the community they're in and their years of experience, whether they have a master's degree, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so starting teachers, it depends on how many years of university you have. Most of our grids go up to 6 years of university, and then you move through the grid based on your years of experience. And it's different in every school district. All of our school districts have different grids, but on average, probably around 60,000 is the starting wage.
Starting at 60, and like what does what's a high school teacher that's been teaching for 38 years and has a master's degree? What's that teacher making most likely?
That's me, but I haven't been teaching for 38 years.
Okay.
But, I've got my master's. I've been working for over 25 years, so I've worked my way through the grid. So around $100,000.
Okay, so $60,000 to $100,000, and $100,000 in this day and age for somebody with 30 years experience and a graduate degree, I would suggest is kind of like. You're just competitive with other industries. Yeah. Like you got to consider that teachers that are teaching for the love of the game, as we might say, for the love of the profession, they feel called to it, will keep other options open if they're unable to sustain their family or if their career is just not providing the opportunities that they need. Let's never take that for granted. Mm-hmm. But from that $60,000 to $100,000 range, what would you suggest would be a more fair range? What would you be looking for, raise-wise?
Well, when I talk to my colleagues and we do this, when we put together an initial proposal, they're looking to make sure that they make up for lost inflation and that they're keeping pace with inflation. Because, as you know, everything is going up. The cost of food is going up, utilities go up, insurance goes up,
sure.
And they want to make sure that they're keeping pace with that.
Okay, so is there a percentage raise that you're looking toward? I mean, if 10%, would that get the deal done, do you think?
Well, no, but there's a little bit more than that. You have to think teachers have taken a 6% raise in the last 12 years, so they're looking to make up for some loss of some purchasing power.
A back pay type scenario, and then maybe a wage moving forward?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that in other deals as well. When you see there's a retroactivity to usually they go back a year.
Yeah,
and
firefighters got
forward.
that. Yeah. So this is like, I guess at some point this is something that becomes very real when families I'm getting the sense if I'm picking up on anything from you, I don't get the sense that teachers are striking right before final exams. Crazier things could happen. I know you're not going to give me an answer on that, but if you start looking toward fall, let's say nothing happens over these next 120 days. Let's say a deal is not struck. The fall means that kids are staying home, and ultimately, I guess at the end, people will start wondering how long would teachers be prepared to strike? Could you see a significant interruption?
Well, this is when we'll have to go back to our members to have conversations about what they're willing to do and where they're willing to go with this. It's not a decision that I make from my chair. It's as we go back to our membership constantly to get feedback from them about where they want to go and how long they want to go for.
Yeah, so I wanted to finish Dubious's comment. It says the strike's less about getting a raise, more about getting lower class numbers, more supports in classrooms. The government already offered a raise and teachers turned it down. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, how decent was the raise?
It was about 12%.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was also with the grid harmonization. But
What does that mean?
It means that everybody would move to the same grid across the province later on down the road.
What's wrong with that?
There's nothing technically wrong with it, but members rejected the mediator's recommendation. And so sometimes I'll hear people talk about the mediator's recommendations, but they've been rejected. They don't exist anymore. They're gone. And so we basically are starting from scratch.
Sharon says, all my teacher friends, and I have a few of them, she says, are saying that it's class size, pay, and support for the EAs, the education assistants, that are so needed to support them in the classroom. We're hearing a lot about EAs, and obviously that issue kind of flared up over the past year, right? Are teachers and EAs in the same boat here? Do they have each other's backs? What's that relationship like?
Definitely. I know that when CUPE was out on strike earlier in the year through some very cold weeks, association was there to support them, and we chat regularly with the leadership of CUPE. Because you have to think a lot of the reasons that EAs went on strike were some of the same reasons that teachers are talking about: wages, classroom conditions. Because our working conditions are students' learning conditions, and that comes to the root of a lot of this.
Yeah, one of the things I think I've disclosed to you in past, like I grew up in a family of educators, right? My grandpa Rudy was chair of the Calgary Catholic School Board. My mom, her two sisters, both teachers, so we grew up with a real appreciation of the profession. But I can't help but notice, and you and I have talked about this. We talked about it earlier today. That kind of sense of like there's a lot of members of the public, including a lot of parents, that just don't seem to be down with the teachers. You know what I mean? There's a lot of chirping that happens. There's a lot of antagonizing teachers, I think, that happens in the public on social media comments and the like. I know that you're very familiar with that. Considering that these are the professionals that are educating these people's kids, that are raising the kids of the future, that are sounding the alarm about the challenges that they're facing and the real world impact that those challenges are having on the kids, on the adults of tomorrow. Does that blow your mind?
It is something that makes me question. I'm like, why would we be this way? Because we would want kids to be successful because they become adults who work in this province, who pay taxes, who help support communities out there. So we'd want to invest in these kids. And sometimes I hear people talk about education as an expenditure, and we need to look at it as an investment. And right now we're not investing in our youth in this province, and I think that is terrible.
Rach says all parents should want smaller class sizes, increased numbers of EAs to help with children with specialized needs. Says large raises are more problematic. Very few jobs are giving cost of living raises these days. That from Rach. These EAs, to be clear, we're not talking about the salaries that you're talking about teachers. I've heard reports that some EAs are I'm not trying to be inflammatory here, but basically on the poverty line.
Yeah, I mean, EAs had not had a significant raise for a long time. That was part of the CUPE strike and part of the messaging that's out there. They're still negotiating at some tables across this province, but people are looking for raises that meet inflationary needs because everybody has the same pressures. And so but as you know, the other comment there, it's also about class size. It's also about the complexities of the students and the fact that we don't have the tools that we need to help our students.
Yeah, Dwayne making the point. He says Alberta has extremes. It says the highest government funding for private and charter schools in the country and the lowest government funding for public education in Canada. He says it's shameful. It is quite a story to tell. Like it is quite a dichotomy there, to state the obvious.
There's a huge dichotomy there, and it's something that is easily fixed. We can do better in terms of this across our province, and it's going to take some political will to move the needle on that.
Blasheep with an interesting question. I always think about this stuff too. Says, if teachers strike, what will this do to low-income folks that work during school time? Obviously, it's big interruptions. Anytime something like this happens, is that something that members are considering, thinking of the families? I guess you're going to tell me they're thinking of their own families, but is that something you think that's forefront in the awareness?
Definitely. I've talked to members who are concerned about that. They know that a strike would cause disruption. It causes inconvenience. It takes away valuable instructional time. But they're willing to take this step forward for their students. And as much as an inconvenience is caused with people, I'm hoping that parents and the general public would see that teachers are willing to take this next step that is an inconvenience to them as well. I mean, they lose wages during this time because they're looking to make things better for their kids who are going to school.
We haven't talked for a while about the curriculum changes that have been debated and piloted and rolled out. Is that factoring into any of this? I know that there was some pushback, perhaps in some divisions more than others, about this new curriculum.
Well, this is part of what's leading to teacher burnout and teachers feeling overwhelmed, is that you think in K-6, they've replaced pretty much all of the curriculum in 3 years without the resources that teachers need in order to do that. So without teacher resources, without student resources, you talk to some of my colleagues who work in Francophone communities, they're translating English documents into French so that they have something to work with. You've seen a lot of curriculum change in the last couple of years. They were going to move forward with some junior high curriculum, but government failed to get the draft out, and so they've changed it a little bit into some field testing, which is a benefit, right? But still, it's a lot all at once, and when you're asking some teachers to redo their entire curriculum for 6 different grades without the resources in several years, and some teachers are teaching multiple grades in one room, so it's not just 6 curriculum, it's 8, 9, 10 curriculum that they're changing. It's been a lot, and so we've been pushing back on that with government, because not only is the implementation timelines really poorly laid out, the content of the curriculum has a lot of teachers concerned as well.
Would that be more common in rural schools, teachers teaching multiple grades at the same time?
No, you'll see some of that here within urban centers as well.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. We talked to Laura Winton a short time ago. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now, with the Alberta Librarians, basically. She's their outgoing president, and we were talking to her about the Alberta government under pressure from special interest groups reviewing some of the books in libraries, what they're describing as age-inappropriate, controversial graphic books. Happy to let our audience know that the Librarians Association is actually meeting with the Education Minister as we speak, as we're recording this episode, and we're going to be talking to them, we believe, in our next episode for an update on how that conversation went. I have to imagine this is something that you've been keeping an eye on as well.
Well, definitely. I mean, when this announcement came, nobody really saw it coming. It was interesting that the minister had this information since last November, but didn't choose to move on it until May. We believe that, books need to be age and grade appropriate in schools, but you also have to consider some schools are K-12 across this province. And so they have a curated library of books for 5-year-olds to 17, 18-year-olds. One of the things that we also noted as well through all of this is that we don't have teacher librarians like we used to have back in the past. So you go back to 2003, I think, the membership was about 12% teacher librarians working across the province. We have maybe 10 right now. And so those are professionals who are experts in helping curate libraries, working with kids to find books. And, ultimately, too, kids deserve to have books in their school libraries that reflect a diverse province, that they can see themselves in those books as well. And I noted as well when this came out that these books tend to be targeted to 2S LGBTQ plus communities. And that is unfortunate, because those kids deserve to see themselves reflected in the school libraries that are there.
We've had it described to us by audience members as an attack on intellectual freedom in Alberta. Do you feel like that's it, or is that hyperbole?
We're seeing more and more resource challenges across the province in a variety of ways, and it's always existed. I mean, I've had students in the past where their parents didn't want their kids, for instance, to read Lord of the Flies, so we would find a different text for them to go through. But we also have to trust our teachers across the province, knowing that they're bringing in texts and books that are going to be age and grade appropriate for their kids.
I want to give you a chance before we wrap this interview, and I'm grateful for your time, to make sure that we haven't missed anything that you think is relevant to this conversation, because that there's people talking on sidelines at soccer games and around the pools and at family barbecues about this looming teacher strike. I notice there's a reason why we're spending a lot of time on this right now. What's your message to everyday Albertans, and what's something that you think that people would do well to focus on as they're reading about these negotiations and tensions, quite frankly, in the news?
As people are talking about this, and there's going to be a lot of conversations as we get into summer about what this all possibly could mean, Albertans need to ask their MLAs, why is it acceptable to you that we fund our kids in this province the least and have for years? Why is it acceptable to government and government officials to not support the needs of students in our classrooms, to not support and give teachers the tools and the resources that they need in order to make kids successful in school? Why is it acceptable that we have the largest classes? Why is it acceptable that we don't have resources for kids with special needs? Why is this acceptable to this government in terms of funding this public education system in our province? And listen to the answers that they have. And if you get sort of, well, historic funding, well, those comments that are come back, push through those talking points and don't let them off the hook with that.
Jason Schilling is the president of the Alberta Teachers Association, always a good friend of the show. We appreciate your availability. Thanks for making time for us, and please do keep us in the loop, will you?
Will do. Anytime you want me here, I'll come.
All right, Jason. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you bet.
This conversation happens with the support of Real Talk partners like our friends at Friesen Brothers, and I don't need to tell you, friends, that barbecue season is here, and if you are after the ultimate Alberta barbecue experience, Friesen Brothers has to be your go-to, because Friesen Brothers is all about Alberta meats. Fresh beef, pork, chicken, even bison. It's all coming from right here in the province. By the way, if you follow me on Instagram, right after Johnny and I wrap this episode, I'm going to start posting my Father's Day memories. I was having so much fun on day of. I didn't post it, but let me tell you, my wife, Carrie, our two boys went over to Friesen Brothers, talked to the butcher, and got some of the most stunning ribeyes you've ever seen in your life. Johnny Carey brings home two really thick ones, and I say, nice work on the ribeyes. She goes, yeah, the one is for me, Wyatt, and Noah, and the other one is for you. And I said, I like how the math works out on that one, babe. Thank you very much. All of Friesen Brothers butchers are adhering to the craft that launched this family business 70 years ago. An independent butcher shop in Hinton, now 16 locations feeding the province. You'll also find freshly made buns, sourdough loaves, and all the good stuff you want alongside your barbecue spread at Friesen Brothers in-store bakery. You can learn more by checking out their website, friesen.com. That's FRESON.com/BBQ season. Our friends at California Closets, ready to help you make the most of your summer with a brand new custom garage installation. That's right, a garage storage system from California Closets can not only help you find your shovel and your sprinkler and your winter tires when you need them, your summer tires when you're ready to hit the road on that road trip. Of course, we all know how that gets. When your garage isn't organized, all it does is create confusion and chaos. When's the last time you hung out in your garage, eh? After a game of golf, after a nice bike ride, spend some time in there, proud of that custom installation that you've got. Maybe a garage storage cabinet, a workbench tailored to your interests. It'll allow you to enjoy your hobbies more. You'll complete tasks much more easily. You can check it all out on their website. Request a free design consultation, nothing to lose, at californiaclosets.ca. North Road Investment Council is in the business of answering the tough questions, the questions that might be keeping you up at night. Do I have enough to retire? Do I have enough to keep her going if I'm lucky enough to live into my 90s? Should I pull on my CPP now, take it early, or wait? North Road's certified financial planners and chartered financial analysts can answer your biggest retirement and financial planning questions. And you'll pay them a per-hour fee, not commissions paid by selling you investment products. So there's no fluff, there's no pressure, just clear advice and strategies that make sense from Marshall, Carey, and their team at northroadic.com. That's North Road Investment Council at northroadic.com. Talking about planning, talking about business, talking about making things happen. A big shout out to our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. You can learn about the benefits of membership on their website, edmontonchamber.com. They've got a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes advocating for businesses in the Metro Edmonton region, and that includes a couple of things. There's this CRL vote going down. That's the Community Revitalization Levy. Later this month, City Council is going to vote on whether or not they're going to extend it. You remember this? This was part of the Arena deal. It's one of the things that's been driving investment and development downtown. If approved, this would secure nearly $500 million in tax-neutral investment for downtown Edmonton. This is through that Downtown Action Plan. The Chamber's built an advocacy toolkit to help businesses engage ahead of the vote, and you can find that on their website. That's edmontonchamber.com/advocacy. We'll link to that in our show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. Interesting to see that polling results. More than 80% of people saying that teachers deserve a raise. Has it evolved
I think
at all?
It's low.
Really? I don't know if it's low or not, because I think you got a lot of people. One of the things that I've learned in doing years of talk radio is that there's a decent amount of the population that either doesn't have kids or doesn't have kids in school and feels like this is something that's not their problem, that they shouldn't have to pay for it.
But I don't have kids, and I think they should, we're kind of cloudy on the average here. Like, somebody said it was 65K. Somebody in the chat said it was 81. Obviously, Jason said, most teachers start a little above 60. The higher end are making 80. If you've been there 30 years, you're making 100. Dude, 30 years with a degree and you're making 100K today? Like, to people right now listening who make 100K, it is not... I mean, you can tell people you make six figures, but it's not going the way it used to even 10 years ago. It's definitely not like it was 20 years ago. And then, other people are saying, well, the national average is a little above 50K, but teaching is not it's not a desk job in an office. There's no days where you come in and like, oh, today's going to be a slow day, or I think I'll leave early. Like, it's hands-on, in your face, babysitting. I always call it babysitting, but I just say that because nowadays it's a lot harder. I mean, someone in the chat, I forget the comment, but they were like, imagine you're throwing a dinner party and somebody's like, okay, this year 20 people are coming, but next year 30 people are coming. Okay, this year 40 people are coming, but 5 are gluten-free, 3 are vegetarian, 1's vegan, and 1's you know what I mean? Like every year, and that's great that we're starting to notice how children are different and try and assess and teach them differently and apply things we do in our profession, teachers to assess their needs and treat them and try to teach them the best they can. But man, you could not pay me $200,000 to be a teacher a year, Ryan. For
you
10
would do
months
it
a
for
year
$200
to take care of kids nowadays. And my last point, and I'm not coming down on parents, but like kids nowadays where parents, I understand you're busy, you're strapped, both of you are working, and when you want a little time to yourself, maybe you throw the kid in front of the iPad or whatever, but then they go to school and their attention is off and they want to look at a screen and they can't listen to a teacher. And those teachers are there and they're learning this over the last few years as well, 5-10 years with the onset of the internet and chat GPT and all these things, TikTok. How to deal, like, these are the people that raise your kid. They're shaping the minds of the youth of tomorrow who are literally going to be running the country and doing all in the public and private sector. I just don't understand why people have such a problem with paying I always advocate for teachers and nurses and all these other people, but teachers especially, and I don't even have kids. So when people with kids say teachers are overpaid or 12% raise is too much, it blows my mind.
Well, and I think it's also relevant. What was the number that he gave us here? A 6% wage increase over the last 12 years. If you look at, I think just even the rate of inflation, I think that we were experiencing inflation over the past few years. You remember in some circumstances it slowed down, and there's a lot of reasons for that, obviously. But at some point you were looking at inflation in some areas like 7, 8, 9, 10%. I'm not saying that that's across the board.
6% over how many years?
Relevant. 6% over 12 years.
I mean, the average.
2013.
What do you ask for a year at a job where you think you're performing?
0%. Everybody asks for 0%, John.
No, but it's like 3 to 5% is what you would if you're doing a great job.
2%. Yeah.
Yeah. So 6 over. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember when I was negotiating contracts or having people negotiate contracts for me with big billion-dollar media companies. You'd always sort of endeavor. I mean, I would start high. I'd go for 50% increase, and then I'd see where I could get. But you would always feel like people would talk. And I think, and I'd be curious to know from Real Talkers that one of the beautiful things about this is John and I have worked in media forever. That's our frame of reference. We bring people in from other industries, other occupations. They give us their frame of reference. I'd love to hear from Real Talkers. What's your industry? What's your job? And what sort of a pay increase do you look at? But I would say standard might be 1.5% to 3%, sort of like a cost of living increase. And so if you look at a cumulative deal, but Jason's making a very good point as well, saying, they're looking for back pay, quite frankly. They're looking for the government to demonstrate that there's an acknowledgement that they haven't seen a wage increase for a number of years. And I know that there are others that are experiencing the same thing in their own world. Like, who was it? Boom, I lost the comment. Boom Shaker X or something like that. Great handle. Thanks for watching. Said something like, hey, teachers aren't the only ones that are being asked to do more with less. Went on to say, in their own job, says in our own job, it's been a shit show right now. Yeah. And that is true. And I think a lot of people are being asked to do more with less, and that's a fact. And sometimes that's a fact of life. However, when you look at the end result, or when you look at the consequences, or when you look at what's at stake, the reality of a teacher underperforming or unable to keep up or unable to do their best, ultimately, how does that manifest itself? It manifests itself in the kids and the outcomes.
Every teacher is shaping hundreds of lives. So that's why, when people say, well, I'd be happy with the 12% raise. Well, I'm not sure what you do for a living, but like teaching to me is one of the most important jobs there is, I feel, because literally hundreds, thousands of kids are coming through. And let's keep teachers happy. We don't want to we need new teachers. No, we need teachers to be happy and stay at their job for years, because the longer you're a teacher, the better you get at it, the more you are able to communicate and understand kids, because you've seen them over decades, like Jason, who's been doing his job for 30 years. That's what we want. We want people happy at their jobs for a long time so they become experts and better at it. And I know it's, we can talk curriculum and all that, and that's a big argument, but the teachers are just doing what they're told to do. They're given a curriculum and they go do their job. But for me, day in, day out, I don't think I could be a teacher. So I just give them props. I don't think I would have the mental patience to deal with 50, that number he threw out, 50 kids, 30, 45 minutes, wild. And then the bell rings, another 50 kids come in. Get me out of there,
If I was a parent with a student in a class with 50 kids, I'd be very concerned.
Well,
I see. Well, check this out in here. The state of Alberta, nice handle, says, I don't know if they're kidding, says, I think they should strike so that schools can hire locals, parents, and grandparents to fill in for the teachers. I don't think that's a good idea at all. But you can also pull your kids out if you want to homeschool them. You do have that right for sure. I also wanted to point out, we got Mark in the chat that's given a shout out to nurses. Mark says that right after he watches the show, he's going to be on his way to the hospital. He's having a surgery, which will be hopefully a final stage in his cancer journey. Mark, we're thinking of you today. Mark B as well in the chat says private schools can choose their students, you guys, so you got to keep that in mind. They can kind of cultivate what that student population looks like. When we talk about overstressed classrooms, when we talk about a lack of EAs as an example, Johnny, I know that this is an anecdote. This is one school's example, but I bet you a lot of people could tell this exact same story. There's a new kid in my son's grade 4 class, and my son's telling me, they're doing everything they can to make him feel welcome because he's just arrived here from Ukraine. But there's some challenges with this little guy, as you might expect, including language barriers, although our son tells us that his language skills, this young man, are really leveling up quickly. I don't even know the kid, and I'm proud of him. But he has some behavioral issues, as you might expect from a young person that's trying to wrap their mind around fleeing a war-torn country. Who knows what he's seen? Who knows the trauma that he's dealing with? Who knows what his home life is like? Who knows the stress that his parents are feeling? And yet, in this classroom, you wonder, is this kid going to be getting the supports that he needs? And if he does, is it happening at the expense of the other 25 to 30 kids in the room, right? That's just one example of what it's like in classrooms today, where one or two children may require more of a teacher's time. And if you know how most teachers are wired, the teachers are going to find the time to give that kid. But at the same time, where's the trade-off? And what does that mean? I always think of the quiet kids. What were you like in school? Were you a quiet one?
No.
Were you no?
I had behavioral issues.
Were you a bit
I was
of
hyperactive.
Were
I had
you a class
attention
clown?
deficit. Yeah.
I was a bit of a class
funny
clown.
guy. Get me in drama class. I'm
for sure.
I'm
I was
acing
the
it
same
every
way,
time.
right? But I always think about the quiet kids, right? The quiet kids, and some of them are sitting in the front row and they're doing just fine. These are the ones that get 95% on every single test, and they're doing their studying, and these are the ones that are the, obviously, the lucky ones, or the ones who have had that opportunity in front of them to be able to focus like that, or maybe they're at that stage in their early learning career. But then there's the quiet ones in the back, right? The quiet ones in the back that don't want to speak up because their reading's not up to snuff, or they don't totally understand what's happening in math, but they don't want the light shone on them. They don't want the attention.
Yeah.
And I always think about those kids too, the ones that aren't making the noise, the ones that are flying under the radar. And that's something we need to be concerned about. It's a lot tougher to fly under the radar when there's 18 kids in the class than when there's 28 or 38 kids in the class.
But you also want teachers to have that radar to see when people are struggling or maybe in the back of the room and not engaged in, answering questions or whatever. And that's why we need good teachers and we need to pay them well, period. That's what I think. And yeah, it's just, somebody in the chat just said now, like, imagine the difference, Ryan. Like we were talking about this the other day. Like, you love your kids, but some mornings, like with 2 kids, it's insane.
It's crazy.
Imagine 50
No, I can't.
kindergarten kids.
Well,
And then now imagine 50 16-year-olds. Like, both of them just sound like a nightmare to me.
We know that
give these people more money.
Yeah, Jillian's a junior high teacher. We know because she's been on the show before. It's great to see her in the chat. She says, if you give me a 12% raise and I still have to teach math to classes of 37 kids, you tell me how that works out. You tell me how that's fair.
That's not a raise.
Right?
That's
so I look at this situation and you hope that they can avoid a strike. And I will say this for context. Everybody was talking about the nurses going on strike until they didn't go on strike. And a deal was struck, and I hope that a deal can be struck here. Jason, I wouldn't say he was being coy. I would say he's being strategic. And obviously I'm trying to get him to lay out his negotiating plan here live on the air for all of us to understand, but he's not going to do that. But I get the sense that teachers aren't going to strike right before final exams. But if I was a grade 12 student right now, that's something I'd be sweating, if I'm being honest.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
the sort of thing that can throw your whole
End of
summer
your,
off
yeah.
kilter. Then all of a sudden, what's
Yeah.
the plan for the fall? And then that's a real wrench in that. You hope that this gets to a situation, and I understand that there has been mediation efforts, and I recognize that the teachers have rejected the mediator's suggestion, the proposed agreement, and they're looking ready to strike. 95% voting to strike. This isn't 50% plus one, but you hope that over the course of the summer, over the 120 days or so, they can get this figured out. Jillian goes on, by the way, to say in 2019, we'll call it 6 years ago, says her junior high had 2 EAs, a counselor, and a librarian, and they now have half an EA. I believe that's an EA working part-time. Says literally we have to interrupt my math lessons to counsel kids that are falling apart. She says, how is this a good thing? And that's the message I think that's really important for people to recognize. And that's where I think people lose the plot. People talk about, and we saw the comments in the chat, and I'm not reading all of them. I see a lot of them. There's a lot of you in here that think that teachers are overpaid and underworked, and they get their whole summers off and the like. I just got to say,
the loudest
well, number
voices.
one, no, yeah, sure, fair enough. But let's say, I would say, like, if you did some polling, maybe we'll do an unscientific, unofficial Twitter poll as well today. Why not?
Sure.
So follow me if you don't on X, and we'll get that up in the next hour or so if you're listening to us live. And we'll review the results in the next episode of the show. But I just think that you get to a point where teachers, and it almost seems foolish to say this, that they should have to do this. But I think that the voice collectively from the teachers needs to be reminding people of the price that you pay when you don't invest in education, to the point where at least the rest of the country is investing in education. It is something that I think Alberta, there's a lot of things that Alberta can be very proud about. Yeah. The eyes of the world are on our province right now as we host the G7 in Kananaskis country, and for all intents and purposes, it appears to be going well. An early departure from the president. We'll talk about that in just a quick second. But we have much to be proud of in this province. But there's a lot of things that are happening here as well that are very curious. If you missed our coal episode with Corb Lund, most recently 2 experts in coal that you got to hear from, that's an example. And here's another one. Spending the least, when it comes to the national average, spending the least of any province or territory in education is a tough look for a province that talks about how much better we'd be doing if we were going it alone. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Yeah. How about this one for Lorraine? Teachers are saints and deserve every penny they earn. Says we need to pay them properly and get class sizes to manageable levels with proper supports. Lorraine's comment is about as reasonable as it gets. You know, it's funny when you talk about, teachers get the 2 months off and this, that, and the other. I just think, like, can you imagine? And everybody loves their kids, obviously. But I know a lot of people, when you drop your kids off, it's like, I need this time.
Yeah, and then
I
you get
need
8
this
hours
time.
at work,
Can
which
you imagine
is also
being in charge of
stressful,
a classroom?
but not as stressful as the time. And I guarantee, like, I don't know, I don't have kids, but I guarantee you love your kids. But sometimes you're just like, thank God I get to go to work. But like, you're dropping them off to these educators who are also like, shaping them emotionally, showing them like self-regulation tools. Like these are all things that parents are supposed to do, but a lot of the times because parents are so busy these days and because there's maybe only one parent in the home or maybe there's no parents in the home and this kid, kids are living with, grandparents or whatever, but like, they take that on and they're trying to do that as well. And that's not really part of their job, but it just comes with the territory. And I got so much respect for teachers, and I'm not saying every teacher is perfect and every teacher should be paid $3 million a year. But what I'm saying is what Jason is saying, it hasn't kept up. It's essentially, this is back pay. Let's get them up to, a comfortable rate where they, 2 months off. Ryan, you give me 1 week in a high school, I'd need like 3 months off just from a week.
Super Chat Ken says, remember, once you hit the max as well, talking on the salary grid, after 11 years and 6 years of education, so let's say you've got your master's, you've been teaching for 11 years, Ken says, you're stuck there until the entire grid goes up. Mm-hmm. You don't keep getting raises, right? Mm-hmm. He says you don't get any more even with 25 years of teaching. And I think that that's an important point as well. Michael says, I'm sorry, but who thinks that working for 35 years with a degree making $100,000 is decent? He says a 5-year firefighter in Calgary makes close to that. And he says, and I think that that's insulting to teachers. That from Michael. You can let us know to talk at ryanjesperson.com what you think about this. Maybe it's a submission for the flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That's how we wrap up our final episode of the week every week. Heads up, everybody. That's going to be our Wednesday episode this week. That is going to be the... Johnny, I'm so bad with dates. It's the 18th of June. That'll be the 18th of June will be our final episode of the week as we prepare to host the Real Talk Golf Classic on Thursday the 19th in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship. But a lot of you were saying, Cliff, for example, chiming in, we asked what are raises looking like in typical workplaces. He says, raises can range from 1% to 3% with an average of 2% if you're meeting expectations on the job. What? Yeah, and I think that tracks with basically my entire career to this point, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but 2% is not like in Canada, like 3 to 5.
No,
like
but
when you go ask for a raise.
No. Well, you can ask for it, but I'm just saying, like, employers can't afford on average to raise employees 5% every single year, right? You just can't do that. Over 10 years, a 50% raise, you just can't do it. But this is where the negotiating comes in, right? So if they negotiate something...
ChatGPT just told me in Canada, the average salary increase employees can typically expect is 3 to 5%.
Annually?
I don't think annually, but
Yeah, I don't know about annually.
A 3 to 5% increase is generally used for cost of living adjustments or merit-based increases.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to know. I would love to hear that real talkers are getting 3 to 5% a year. It just seems like a lot to me. But when you're talking about what the teachers are talking about, which is 6% over 12 years, now all of a sudden you're looking and saying over the course of 12 years, let's set it at 1.5%. Let's set it at 2%. You should be looking at a 25% increase after that period of time, right? But the government also has to sell it to the public, right? And there's no way that the government heading into negotiations with other big unions is going to be able to roll out a 20% increase for teachers. There's just no way that it's going to happen. So you kind of wonder here, what did Jason say that they turned down? What did he say? It was over 10%.
12.
Was it 12% that they turned down? So I think that that's interesting to hear to hear as well. Ms. KD says, I worked in HR in the Calgary Public Library. Employees only moved up the grid after about 1,850 hours, and the raise was like 75 cents. Says without a 4-year degree, they could not move past level 4. So that's where your education factors in as well. Vamp Fashion says, the reason that teachers know they can strike endlessly is they know that parents don't want to have to spend all day with their demon spawn. That from Vamp Fashions. I don't get the sense that teachers want to strike. Like right now, they're willing to strike, but I don't think that they're happy to strike. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know any sector, whether you're talking about nurses, healthcare workers, education support workers, teachers, letter carriers, whatever the case is. I've never known anybody, and I've known a lot of people on strike. Hell, at the beginning of my broadcast career, my very first job, Calgary Herald, 185 people walked out like very early in my career there. It was the largest media strike in history at that time, and it was brutal. And you look at some of the the costs of those strikes. And I'm talking, morale, I'm talking among team members, I'm talking about some of the permanent damage that can be done within a workplace due to a strike. And I don't really know anybody that's looked back on it and said, we're grateful we did it. Maybe aside from applying pressure to get a deal done, but it's rarely a very positive experience for people. Kenzie says, me and you both, Ryan, it's the middle of the road kids that I get concerned about that are left behind here. Tara Lynn says sometimes it's the noisy kid, the one in the class who flies over the radar. They're begging for help, but exhausted teachers just can't. That's an interesting point as well. I want to thank all of you that are, our live chat is humming right now. There's a reason why we're spending so much time on it because, a lot of people are sharing their own personal stories. You can always leave a comment on our YouTube episodes as well. And, of course, you can always send us an email. Dubia says, I can't believe nobody was going to mention that the teachers turned down that raise. Says that's important framing and communications that reaches the public. He says this is not a greed issue. And I think that that's an important point as well, right? This is about more than just money. This is about classroom conditions, and that's something I think you're not talking about, you can't apply the greed label to that, right? That's a situation where teachers are saying we're not able to adequately do our job, and the price of us not being able to adequately do our job is a price that society will pay. Like, hey, everybody, like us, I'm talking to me and you at the same time. These kids are the ones that are going to be looking after us when we're getting old, right? When we're aging out, right? These are
and I'm scared
the doctors and nurses and care workers.
Yeah.
And, team community members of the future.
Yeah, I'm going to be like, man, I need you to wheel me into the park so I can look at the birds. And the kid's going to be like, bro, That's
what you and I are going to be doing like 30 years from now.
But it's going to be a 40-year-old being like,
old
bro,
man.
and I'm going to be like, oh, God, who taught this person to
Yeah, no kidding.
caretake?
Hey, I want to take a look at what's been going down at the G7, kind of an interesting development, a very interesting development with the most powerful person on planet Earth leaving the summit. Before a couple of meetings, the president was supposed to be meeting with the presidents of Ukraine and Mexico. Volodymyr Zelensky, you have to imagine, would be disappointed to not be able to bend the ear of the American president. But if we can tee up that video, this is what Donald Trump told reporters just moments before departing Kananaskis. Says it's an emergency, needs to get back to D.C., to do what the United States can do to negotiate a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. This is the American president.
I have to be back. Very important. I want to just thank our great host. They did a fantastic job. Thank you. In Canada. But you probably see what I see. And I have to be back as soon as I can. We're going to have dinner with these wonderful leaders. And then I get on the plane. I have to be back early for obvious reasons. I loved it. I tell you, I loved it. And I think we got a lot done. Really a lot done. In fact, UK, we signed a big trade deal today, and we're working on others. But we had just a really great relationship with everybody, and it's really nice. I wish I could stay for tomorrow, but they understand. This is big. This is big stuff.
They go on to ask him if, he basically gives the same answer again and again and again, saying, I got to get back. Obviously, the situation, between Israel and Iran, tensions are at an all-time high. And obviously, civilian casualties, I think, are grabbing the world's attention. As increased instability in that region is sort of demanding the attention of the international community. But as mentioned, this does come at a cost, and that is a canceled meeting between the presidents of the United States and Ukraine. Just a short time ago on this show, on the 9th of June, we talked to Stephen Harper's former immigration minister. He was also an ambassador to Afghanistan. Chris Alexander talked to us about the last time that the Kananaskis country hosted the G7. That was in 2002. He talked to us, told us a wild story about going for a walk with Vladimir Putin in the woods, talking about the relationship between Canada and Russia, Russia's role on the global stage. You have to check out the episode. I'll show it to you now. That was on the 9th of June. The episode is titled Donald Trump versus California and Democracy. Great takes, I thought, from Chris Alexander. Really smart guy with a lot of international experience. But he talked to us about Ukraine, and it's expected that today, as we speak, as a matter of fact, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, will be announcing increased support for Ukraine. As a matter of fact, making the announcement that Canada will offer an additional $2 billion in military aid to Ukraine and another $2.3 billion in loans. Chris Alexander made no bones about it, said on the Ukraine file, quite frankly, especially in light of the United States' relationship with Russia, Canada simply has not done enough.
We have to see the bigger picture. This is part of the same authoritarian challenge that we're dealing with in Washington. The hard end of it is in Ukraine, and Ukraine is defending all of us from this onslaught. If Russia succeeds in Ukraine, they will be attacking other parts of Europe, and we will have to fulfill our obligations as an ally to Estonia, to Latvia, where our troops are already based, or to Poland. We don't want to get to that point. We need a decisive result in Ukraine to show authoritarians that they won't succeed with this hard challenge to borders, which we haven't seen since 1945, and to have leverage against the unscrupulous counterparties we're dealing with in Washington, and empower people who are interested in alliances, in trade and democracy in the United States. Those people are feeling beaten down. One way to empower them is by doing the right thing in Ukraine, showing that the tide can be turned, defeating Russia there. Canada can play a huge role. We just haven't made it a priority. We've been fairly generous supporting Ukraine financially. On the military side, we've really underperformed. And I think with US support falling off, now is the time to change that channel and do what Canada can do, show the leadership that we showed in 2 world wars, in Korea, in Afghanistan, in a cause that really matters for today.
That was Chris Alexander, who joined us on the 9th of June. I see a comment here in the chat. Boss Sheep says, can we please stop sending money to other countries when we can't even take care of our own people? Says homelessness, unemployment at an all-time high. Chris made a very good point in there where he says Ukraine is defending all of us right now. And he talked about Vladimir Putin's goals, the aspirations to gain more ground in Europe. And I really do think that that's an important warning to heed. And I think that that's a compelling argument that Canada needs to ramp up involvement in Ukraine. He didn't talk, by the way, just about financial investments. He talked about military tools. He talked about infrastructure. He talked about equipment and how he believes that Canada has really dropped the ball over the past year or so, maybe over the past couple of years. I encourage you to check out that full episode if you haven't heard it already. That's the 9th of June. So what's the takeaway here for Canada? Well, it sounds like a productive meeting, just over an hour. They said they met for about 70 minutes. Prime Minister Carney, President Trump, during that meeting that they had, they did agree to hammer out a deal on tariffs and trade to get something figured out within the next 30 days, which I do think is interesting. And I do think that that's positive. While the U.S. and the U.K. reached a trade deal, agreed on a tariff deal, Keir Starmer and Donald Trump during that summit, which is obviously good news for those nations, Canada failing to get to that point. But I think that putting a timeline on it, a 30-day timeline on it, kind of sets or sends a message to Canadians. When the Prime Minister says that on the record, we've agreed to figure something out within the next 30 days, that's a pass-fail, right? The 30 days comes and goes. It's kind of like what Mark Carney said about eliminating interprovincial trade. His words, free trade in Canada by Canada Day. That was the promise he made, giving Canadians that July 1st to circle on the calendar. This is similar. 30 days to get things figured out with the United States. Maybe reason for optimism for a lot of people that have been watching this G7, hoping to see that sorted out, including a lot of people involved in industry in Canada.
Sure. I mean, yeah. In general,
you're not optimistic?
No. And I thought Carney was doing pretty well from the get-go. But like 30, it's been too long already. Let's get this figured out now. Why does the UK have a deal and we don't?
Well, did you
Number
see
two,
Trump...
30 days, like with everything going on in the world, Iran, Ukraine, like what could happen in 30 days? Maybe Trump was too busy to stay at G7. I don't have any faith that he is not going to be more busy in the next 4 weeks if things escalate globally, that he's going to be able to come to Canada or sit down on a Zoom and hammer out a huge tariff deal. I have no confidence in
I mean, I guess so now it'll kind of bump down a level, right? So you'll have Canadian diplomats and those that are working, tirelessly, I'm sure, behind the scenes to kind of get all this figured out.
But what I'm saying is don't put a time limit on it. I feel like you just said pass,
but
fail.
That's why
he immediately put up a fail barrier.
But that's
why he's going to fail this.
Sure, but yeah, that's the glass half empty approach, right? I believe that strategically, you have to think in so many ways as Trump, put his name on a book that somebody else wrote called The Art of the Deal. Mark Carney has also been a deal maker through the course of his career, and I don't believe, like you see it here and here, like Jason Schilling, he's not spilling the tea on Real Talk and telling us how the negotiations are going. So for Carney to come out publicly, and when I say the eyes of the world, I mean it. Like everybody's paying attention to the G7 for sure.
Oh yeah.
Except for those that are being shelled in Iran and Israel right now, and I'm not making light of it. I'm just saying for a lot of people, there's bigger issues in their orbit than the G7. But for people that are paying attention to markets and trade and tariffs and where everything's going, to hear that 30-day timeline, it's a gutsy move by the Prime Minister. There's got to be reason for it. I don't think you put that timeline out there if you're not confident you're going to get something done.
He must know something we don't, because what I know is that every time Trump says, yeah, we're going to get a deal done in the next 2 to 4 weeks, it's 6 months. So I don't know why you would ever set a timer with Trump. He is like all over the place.
Yeah.
So maybe he does know something we don't, but I immediately thought this is not going to happen.
Yeah. Interesting to see the G7 leaders aside from Trump. So Trump was not included in this statement, but they're urging a, what did they call it? A de-escalation of hostility in the Middle East, but they've stopped short of calling for a ceasefire. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is that Trump, as that clip went on, we didn't want to play like 6 minutes of it for you, but as the clip goes on, it was, I think a CBC reporter asked him, so this is about, so the reason you're leaving is Israel and Iran.
Yeah,
and
he's trying to get it out of him.
Well, but he said it's much bigger than that. So I'd be curious to know what's much bigger than that.
But to Trump, that could be like announcing another parade, or like he always says, I've got a big announcement tomorrow, and then he's like, we're gonna have McDonald's with an NFL football team. Like, who cares? Who knows what that means? But in general, I don't like the tone of all this stuff going on either, where ceasefire, let's de-escalate, but like all his comments seem to be directed at Iran. And I'm not saying Iran is innocent, obviously, but like everyone needs to de-escalate. Like everyone across the water right now that North America is looking at, everything's escalating.
Yeah, the position Israel's taking, I saw this is just a civilian. I don't mean that as her life doesn't have value, but I saw an interesting report from an Israeli civilian the other day, and her her apartment complex had been hit by a missile that somehow miraculously made its way through Israel's dome defense system. But she said in plain language, and this is the position they take, she said, they're trying to destroy us.
I saw that, yeah.
She says, we have no choice. They are trying to destroy us. JJ's in our live chat powered by Park Power says things will escalate globally. This is not an if. And JJ, I think you're right, says this situation requires an intelligent and cool leader with insights and a moral compass, and Trump is not that person.
Do we want to show that? We were talking about it yesterday. I'm not sure if we can hear what they're saying, but Trump and that indigenous leader.
Yeah, why don't we? So this is kind of an interesting development. So this was, we discussed this as Air Force One landed in Calgary. And the President of the United States greeted by, Calgary's Mayor Jody Gondek, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, and others. Tsuut'ina Minor Chief on Treaty 7, Stephen Crowchild, was part of that welcoming delegation. And kind of a remarkable moment as he shakes hands with the American president and takes the opportunity to say something to him. And you could see that what he was saying was of great significance, right? It wasn't joking around. This was very serious. And, National Chief Cindy Woodhouse has shared publicly the content of that brief conversation. And this is what Minor Chief Stephen Crowchild had to say, quote, when it came to that one individual, okay, he's talking about the President of the United States. When it came to that one individual, I almost didn't stay. I was filled with rage, and I knew by then that the world was watching. I was going to go home because I didn't want to do anything to bring negativity to my people. But I consulted with some close people, and based on wise feedback, I stayed. Visibility is key. Diplomacy is important. There was no one else there. So I prayed, and I tried my best to observe everything. I prayed to Creator, my grandmothers, grandfathers, and to my mom. I asked them to guide my words and actions in that moment. As I stood on the tarmac next to my good friend Jyoti, the mayor of Calgary, I watched Trump approach each delegate before me, and I thought of those suffering around the world, my son, my nation, my ancestors, and I waited for him to approach. Instead of war, I chose peace. Instead of hate, I chose love. Instead of hostility, I tried my best to show humanity. He was just another person, the ones I greeted before him. Some would say a horrible person. I felt strong with my feather hat, which I received a transfer for yesterday, my treaty suit, my beadwork, and good medicine. I stood taller than him as a proud Tsuut'ina, close as it gets. I spoke my Tsuut'ina language. I showed him my treaty medal. I told him it's older than Canada and that this is native land. I spoke for my elders, babies, and future generations. I spoke for peace and protecting water for future generations. I tried to say as much as I could, as wisely as I could, while representing with honor and dignity. Whether he listened or not, time will tell. I don't care if it was anyone else. In fact, I wish I was someone else. But I'm glad that the world got to witness a treaty suit, treaty medal, beautiful beadwork, precious feather hat, and us. I take assurance in knowing a message of protecting water and peace was spoken to world leaders. That from Tsuut'ina Councillor Stephen Crowchild, as shared by National Chief Cindy Woodhouse. That's powerful stuff. Right?
I'm listening and I'm like, he's holding a lot back here.
Yeah.
You know, those are some really powerful words, but, you know, important. And I just wonder what I just want to be a fly on the wall there. I want to know how Trump responded. You know what I mean? I want to hear it.
Well, it's kind of like,
give me the audio. Come on, somebody.
He's a very interesting. I mean, he's such a disruptor in politics. He's so different. You watch Mark Carney kind of work the room at the G7. I don't know if you saw when Germany's chancellor arrives.
He's a glad-hander.
And he goes,
he's
first of all, the German chancellor is like 7 feet tall, by the way. Just towers over Carney. I was like, somebody get Carney like a shoebox to stand on or something. But he comes in and he says, I love Canada. And Carney goes, I love Germany. And he goes, oh, the mutual love and affinity. Yeah. I mean, they're kind of working the room. Trump doesn't work like that. He's never worked like that. He didn't work like that in real estate. He didn't work like that on TV.
He expects people to come to him.
And I thought it was fascinating when he had his media availability in front of journalists at one point about 24 hours ago from the time that we're talking to you. And they were talking about tariffs and trade. And a lot of the questions were around whether or not they were going to be able to hammer out deals, the U.S. and the U.K., the U.S. and Canada and other nations. And Trump just basically says to the entire room, he goes, I'm a tariff guy. He goes, I've always been a tariff guy. He goes, they're nice, they're clean, they're efficient, they're immediate. And the whole rest of the room, like Carney's just standing there looking at him like, actually, Carney's face kind of said, actually. But Trump, more than any other world leader, marches to the beat of his own drum. And you kind of wonder, you hope. I don't know how something like what Minor Chief Crowchild shared could not resonate with you. But then again, who knows the inner workings of the brain of Donald Trump?
I mean, if he's marching to the beat of his own drum, it's definitely like a jazz tempo. Like it's all over, it's scatting. You've seen him dance. He's just like, his brain is going crazy. But yeah, it was crazy to see. Not crazy, but it was like you were just saying. Like Carney is a room worker. He's walking around. He knows what to say to each person, and Trump's laying in the cut. He wants people to come up to him. He's waiting for offers. He's waiting for deals. He's waiting to be offered something, you know, large jets. And but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of the people were kind of like conversing, and even that picture I showed just here, kind of everyone's talking and he's just, you know, there's Donald just kind of staring off by himself. Well, everyone else is conversating around him.
I don't mean this as a slight. I'm a proud Canadian. And of course, you know, the Germans and the Italians and everybody else that's watching this, you know, all these member nations, the European Council and everybody else. But it is undeniable that he swings the biggest stick. The United States is the most powerful player at any table they're sitting at.
Sure.
And so for that reason, I think that there's a bit of a vacuum that's felt when the American president leaves the G7 early.
Sure.
You know, but you sort of hope that something can come out of it that will resonate with people.
You also then, you know, now they can, the shoulders kind of relax a bit when he leaves the room. They fire up the fire pit and roast marshmallows and turn on the music.
I would think so.
Relax a little for sure.
I can tell you,
right?
at the front entrance to that resort, they have a wood-burning fireplace right outside, and it is a game changer. Super Chat Ken says, by the way, good for Trump for standing there and listening. Ken says, it's a pretty rare event for me to have any respect for Trump, but respect where it's due. He could have just moved on. He did sit and listen. He did sit and take it in, which I guess is sort of like, to be honest, minimum expectations. But I'll take Ken's point as well.
But then he had to go because, you know, he had to. Kid Rock was meeting him at the White House for brunch or something.
It probably was that.
No, I understand, though. If I'm the American president right now, I mean, he's got a lot more on his plate. I will say that when Carney said, I understand, I was like, I would be at the White House too with bombs flying overhead over in the Middle East and stuff like it.
I see comments here, and I've seen this as a recurring comment in the show. Mark Carney hasn't mentioned elbows. He hasn't used his elbows, the Elbows Up campaign, ever since election night. Says that's weird. I just feel, with no disrespect to the commentator, well, you didn't think that he was going to be punching people in the nose, did you? Like, this was, number one, it's an election campaign. But number two, elbows up is it's obviously a metaphor. I hope I'm not, like, sort of dumbing this down too far. But in the sense that Canada will stand strong and defiantly and unapologetically in its best interests. And, of course, that relates to tariffs and trade, that relates to border security, that relates to international alliances, that relates to military funding and everything else that's become a real priority here. But elbows up doesn't mean that we're looking for an adversarial relationship with our biggest trading partner. That would be moronic.
No.
But I think it does mean that we're not going to sit back and take it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what the Elbows Up campaign, I don't think that any Canadian, whether you voted for the Liberals or whether you voted for the Conservatives, the NDs, or any other party, would be happy to see a sustained antagonistic approach to the relationship between Canada and the United States. And anybody that was expecting that or thought that that's what that meant, I think is maybe missing the point.
It's like an ad contract. That promotion's over, elbows up. Maybe we bring it back, but like in the words of George Costanza, we're negotiating. I'm a negotiator. We're like that doesn't work right now. It's like, and I know we're going to transition to hockey, but it's like drag them back to Alberta. You don't say that in round 1 through 4. You say it when the time is right, and the time is right now because we need to drag these cats back to Alberta.
Optimist says that's the problem with the world, you guys. The United States shouldn't hold that much power over other countries. It should be equal between all countries working in unison. I mean, I don't know. Oh, I'll take your point, though. But
Switzerland should have as much power as USA.
Let's not drag. The Swiss don't like to be dragged into anything.
I love the Swiss.
The Swiss are like, if we could just.
Whoa, why are you mentioning us?
We're good, you guys. We're good.
We're not in this.
We're good.
We have no opinion.
Before we talk hockey, can we talk golf for a quick second?
Sure.
I just wanted to tell you all about a round that we had over Father's Day at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. You know how proud we are to partner with the Ranch and of course, to be hosting our Real Talk Golf Classic there coming up on Thursday. That's the 19th of June in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship. Here's my buddy Dustin Johnner, just back from a return to Belfast. He's an alum of the Belfast Giants. He was out there taken to the ice, and obviously his game looking pretty good. Dustin beat all of us by 10 strokes or more at our annual Father's Day Classic at the Ranch. And my buddy Brett Chartrand had to know that this shot was going to be shown as he catches a tree on that very difficult 16th hole. He demanded that I delete the video and not show it on Real
and
Talk.
Then you put it on
and if you know me,
a live stream.
If you tell me, if you indicate to me that you are unhappy with the video and do not want it shown on the show, well, buddy, because Brett and I are quietly competitive with one another. We shoot right around the same every time we play golf together, and so I couldn't resist the chance out there. But as you can see, I mean, the real reason to show you these videos is the caliber and the condition that the course is in. Look at that. That's Kubi Energy CEO Jake Kubisky swinging the big stick on the 10th tee box. John, 48 hours from now, that tee box will be occupied by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, serving up their dilly bar shooters. And here's DJ with the big stick on 18 across the water, narrowly missing the drink cart, and of course sticking it right where he wanted for a pitching wedge approach and a shot at birdie, which unfortunately he was unable to capitalize on. But another phenomenal day at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. Quite rightfully ranked the #1 public course in the province of Alberta.
Really?
I love to call it, yeah, man.
Wow.
I love to call it my home course, and we have so much fun there. And, of course, when you're out there golfing at the Ranch, keep an eye. As soon as your cart leaves the second tee box, you will see the Real Talk advertisement up on your GPS screen with a QR code to make it nice and easy to link to our website. We're proud partners of the Ranch, and I want to remind you that if you're looking to book a tee time or book a tournament this summer, you can get in touch with them today. Hurry, because they're filling up. They're going to do 120 tournaments this year, you guys. You can find them online at theranchgolf.com. This is an amazing comment. That dude has as bad a swing as me. Ken, I don't know how you swing, but I hope to see you at a Real Talk Golf Classic down the line so we can compare and contrast. It's a tough scenario when you're videoed playing golf or anything else for that matter. I think everybody in the back of their mind always believes that their golf swing looks a little bit better than it actually does. I've experienced this as well. Videos of us playing basketball, our men's league team, videos of me snowboarding, videos of playing hockey. In your brain, you always look much better than you actually do. The tail of the tape, as they say. How are you feeling heading into tonight? Game 6.
We're going to 7.
Yeah,
That's
we
what
are.
it's always been for me. But I say that, but I mean, how can you? Would anyone be surprised if Florida won tonight? They're an incredible hockey team. They have a certain style of play. They're the reigning Cup champs. I'll say it again. You know, this Brad Marchand is he's unstoppable right now. Bennett is just him and Marchand just dropping goals. And that one goal by Bennett and I'll just talk about it for a second. Absolutely incredible. Where, like, you know, it was a misplay by the Oilers defenseman, but still, he came in, he nails one Oiler. Then he goes over to the wall, nails another Oiler. Then he turns around, and most guys would, like, go to the wall. Maybe there's a chip-in happening. No, he streams straight center ice. Like, just the hockey IQ for Bennett. Like, whether you love him or hate him, just off the charts. And gets this little just tap pass, and then immediately, I looked at Allie, I was like, it's going in. It's going in.
Yeah, we got
that's a different one, but
there we go. Yeah,
but I immediately I was
about
like,
Bennett.
You just feel it when like, oh, this one's going in, right? But like, just an incredible hockey team. So obviously, my belief in the Oilers is 100%. We're going to Game 7. But will I be surprised if we wake up tomorrow and they're 2-time champs? No.
Yeah, no. I'm the Sam Bennett story has been remarkable. I don't want to spend too much time talking about Florida because I'm trying to put good juju into the universe. I'm trying to win the favor and maintain the favor of the hockey gods. But if we get really nerdy and look way back when, Sam Bennett's draft year, I think Calgary took him 4th overall, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But he had a shoulder injury, and he was unable. So at the draft combine, which is like where all the players are, sort of like showing how they can lift and their VO max and how's their fitness.
Yeah.
They do the interviews, I think a little bit later on, where the teams are trying to sort of pick their brains, get a sense of what makes them tick and whether or not they have any sort of like psychological red flags. But I remember that Bennett, based on his shoulder injury, was, as the story goes, unable to do a single chin-up because of the injury he was rehabbing. But they say that it cost his draft stock. And then when Calgary snagged him, I think it was with the 4th overall pick, a lot of people kind of wondered how that pick was going to work out. And then he became kind of a valuable member of the Calgary Flames to a certain degree, but not valuable enough for the team to keep him. And he found his new home in Florida, and boy, has he ever found a home in Florida. 15 goals to this point. He's got to be among those being considered for the Conn Smythe Trophy. I would say if Edmonton wins, it's probably going to be Leon Draisaitl, and I would say if Florida wins, it's probably going to be Bobrovsky or Bennett, maybe Brad Marchand. He's got 5 goals in the final already. Like if Marchand scores
another OT
6
winner,
or you know what I mean? Then it's got to maybe be Brad.
crazy.
So it could be up in the air. But then Sam Bennett is an unrestricted free agent this summer.
Sure.
And that guy is going to get a bag. That guy's going to get paid.
I mean, sure, but like, why would you leave? Like, you're on a team that suits you. Like, was Sam Bennett incredible when he was on Calgary? No, because it wasn't a right fit. Now he's on a team where, like, his style of play suits the team. And, like, we're not sports experts, but we're just chatting on our podcast like we usually do. Like, I don't see someone, like, if I'm him and Florida offers me 7 times whatever, like $7 million.
Well, they can offer him 8. They're the only team that can offer him 8 years, and you have to guess that he'd be looking for $9 million.
Yeah, but still, and some people are saying 10. Why would I, over the course of a few years, say, oh, I would rather make $3 to $6 to $9 million more dollars, or win another Stanley Cup with this incredible team? Like, what? It's the perfect fit for him. Why? So you can make $9 million more dollars when you're already going to make like $60 million anyways?
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think maybe he looks at the train that's coming down the tracks, and that is the Edmonton Oilers dynasty getting set to unfold. He's realized he's already got his cup, and it's time to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Having said all that, we're talking a lot about Florida, but you can't underestimate the stars, right? Like, the Panthers are the best better team collectively, but we have the better stars. Like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. If these guys come out tonight, there's no telling what could happen. Look what happened last time we were down 3-0, Ryan. Came all the way back for Game 7.
Yeah.
There's no reason the Oilers can't win tonight, and so I believe they will.
I agree 100%. Mark it. Oilers win Game 6, back for Game 7 on the 20th of June
this
to
city
hoist the cup on home
It's
ice.
going to explode if we go to Game 7. It is going to be
When?
absolutely insane. The city is going to be alive like a Friday night in Edmonton for the Stanley Cup. This somebody wrote this on a scroll thousands of years ago and dropped it in a bottle and threw it in the ocean, and it's just like it's written in the stars. So I'm hoping for nothing else.
Les, who's one of our YouTube channel members, thanks for that, Les, says, when does the CFL start? It's already started, man. It's already started.
Elks home opener.
And of course, JJ says, geez, $60 million. And JJ, by the way, it's going to be more than that. But he says $60 million, and I'm trying to figure out how to make good choices at the Dollarama grocery aisle. I don't blame you. There's a lot of people right now that are really struggling, and I don't just say that as a throwaway comment. That's obvious, and we appreciate when you share your firsthand perspective with us. It can be tough when you start talking about this, isn't it, where you go, people will do anything to keep their favorite athlete with their favorite team. I remember when I was growing up in Calgary, and Jerome McGinley's contract was up, and basically the consensus was pay him whatever he wants. Calgary, so I'm not even joking.
I mean, yeah.
I remember working. I was bartending at Earl's at the time, and I remember a guy sitting at our wood just saying, pay him whatever he wants.
I know.
And at the same time, these are fans and families. It's not lost on me that the average price, I don't know the average price actually, because there's probably some high water marks that would skew the average, but you're not getting into the rink. You didn't get in for Game 5 for any less than $3,500 for a pair. And I'm not talking about prime seats, although I will say any seat in the building for Game 5 of a Stanley Cup Final is a great seat. But I would say if this thing goes to 7, we're going to see prices skyrocket yet again. I look around and I wonder, you and I both know we've worked there. The capacity for Rogers Place is approximately 18,400 for a game. There are 18,400 people that are finding a way to pay a minimum of $1,500 per seat.
Yeah.
And some of those seats are going for astronomical prices. I can't even imagine what loge tables and luxury boxes and theater boxes are going for right now. But I just wonder, where is the money coming from? I think part of the answer is that people aren't going to be going on summer vacations, or maybe they're trading their plan to go to Invermere or Disneyland or whatever it is to be able to attend. This is maybe a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Maybe the Oilers never make it back to the Stanley Cup Final, knock on wood. I hope that's not the case, but you never know. When the opportunity presents itself, people step up. Oh, yeah. But I was telling you, we were lucky enough and blessed enough to get access to some tickets, and I was able to take my 9-year-old to Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Do you remember what I told you about what it cost us to get to concession and how wild that was? Okay, Real Talkers, here's the deal. Okay, this is our exact order. Okay, I got a slice of pizza, 1 slice of pizza, 2 beers, because, you know. Wyatt got a Coke, he got a thing of Starburst candy, and he got a bag of popcorn. Okay, so 1 piece of pizza, 2 beers, a Coke, a Starburst candy, and a popcorn. You know how much that was, Real Talkers? Before tip, $83. $83 for 2 beers, a can of Coke, a piece of pizza, a popcorn, and a Starburst candy. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know how people can sustain this through an entire playoff run. It's absolutely bonkers. Yeah,
and like you were just saying, it's hard talking about a player earning $60 million when I know we were just talking about teachers not even earning, $70,000 to $80,000 or $100,000. But at the same time, we're talking about people, and I'll just add that asterisk. There's nobody who can do what these people can do. 750 players in the NHL. Maybe 14 of them are making the 10 mil mark. Maybe. We're talking about 14 people on the planet who can do what Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand on the breakaway, Connor McDavid when he does those things where we're like, you're from another planet, Leon Draisaitl when he gets 4 overtime winners in a playoff run. It's just like, pay them whatever they want. No,
you're right. There's 17 players this year that are making $10 million annually.
I thought it was
or
around
more.
15.
Yeah. Among them, the Panthers goalie Sergei Bobrovsky at 10 mil, Eichel, Barkov at 10 mil. Yeah. Of course, Calgary's Jonathan Huberdeau at 10.5. Oof. You know who's also making 10.5 mil this year? Carey Price.
Yeah.
the goaltender.
Well, that's a retirement fee.
No, and
That's
I
just
love
that.
Carey Price. Highest paid player in the league this year is Austin Matthews at 13.25. And, of course, we'll soon see him taken over. You've got Leon Draisaitl's deal that'll be kicking in, right? And you've also got Connor McDavid, who will get extended this summer as well.
How hard is it to win a Stanley Cup these days? You're watching these guys in the post game. Even Brad Marchand, who's scoring all these goals, he's like, after Game 4, I think he was just like, you have no idea how hard it is to win a Stanley Cup mentally and physically. And then the people that can do these things, I mean, I think it's crazy the amount of money they make, but there's only a few people in the world who can do these things, and that's why they get paid that, right?
For sure. Michael says it's called debt, Ryan. I mean, I get it, but I mean, if that's the answer, then that's the answer. If people are going thousands and thousands and thousands into debt to go to games, that's your answer right there. Ken says, come on, Ryan. Says they're entertaining their clients and their company is buying the tickets. I'm sure in many circumstances that's true for sure. Jill says $83 for that snack. She says, no, I'm going to spend that at Disney. She says that's 2 pairs of mouse ears and a pizza.
So many people, so many adults I know obsessed with Disney World.
Oh, yeah.
Love it. Like
adult Disney
adult
movement,
vacation at Disney
that is
World.
a thing. Yeah. That is a thing for sure. Dwayne says
got
he
into
remembers when he saw Paul McCartney live in Edmonton 2012. Says he paid $275 for the very last ticket for the second show. Says he heard that tickets were being sold for thousands of dollars. Yeah, no doubt.
Well, that's the other thing. And we probably should tell people, like, there is some serious fraud going on, like on Facebook Marketplace and, non-authorized ticket resellers. People have been showing up. Rogers Place put out a post saying people have been showing up, like literally like people with families, like mom, dad, or partners, whatever, kids, grandma, grandpa, whoever's going to the game and thinking they got this deal of a lifetime. Probably not like, oh my God, this was stupid $50 tickets. But like when you're looking at a $1,500 ticket, someone's saying, hey, I'm selling 4 and they're each $750 or whatever. And they're fake tickets. They're fake QR codes. They're fake, tickets. So just watch out, especially if we go to Game 7. That is going to increase like tenfold. Everyone's going to be saying they have tickets to Game 7, which, Ryan, we know there are no tickets left to Game 7. There are likely hardly any, unless the Edmonton Oilers put out a post saying there are some. Follow this link, right?
Ms. KD, quite rightfully bringing this conversation, thanks for your YouTube channel membership, Ms. KD, says, bringing this conversation full circle. She says, but remember, teachers shouldn't make more than $60,000. She says this is a perfect example of our values. Isn't that the truth? And a very good point. I also see a lot of you, and I do want to recognize this, taking swipes and shots at the government. Fair play. Talking about you don't always need a lot of money to be able to get tickets to a Stanley Cup final game or playoff game. All you need to be able to do is execute Turkish Tylenol deals. So there's a good shot there. I was about to drop a big bomb, but what do you have going on?
I'm just looking on StubHub. There are tickets. Like, I didn't mean there are no tickets to the Oilers.
What are the prices looking like?
I just looked at 2 in Section 102 for, the nice price of $13,000.
Well, okay, but that's what they're listed for. I don't know if they're going to sell for that, but that would be.
But even the upper decks are like, I mean, most of them look at about $3,000.
You know, one of the interesting
$3,000
things
and over for 2 tickets.
When you keep an eye on how people have their prices listed. So that's that's a StubHub, like a secondary site. There's other ones as well. And then a lot of people will go through the official ticket reseller with Ticketmaster. And Ticketmaster obviously takes their share on that as well. But these are the prices that the ticket holders are selling them for. So the ticket owner, the ticket holder has set that price. So when you see a ticket for like $13,000 per seat, what that person is saying is that they are obviously planning on going to the game, but if they can get $26,000 for the pair, that's their price to exit.
100%.
And what I think about that is all you need is one multimillionaire from Florida who's going to fly private up to Edmonton to watch the game, and for them, price is not an issue. And I think for a lot of people, although I can't imagine having tickets all the way through the season and then selling your Game 7 ticket. I can't imagine doing that. I have to imagine you'd probably sell it and try to buy somewhere higher up in the upper deck. But for a lot of these people,
for another pair.
you sell Game 7, and maybe that pays for your entire playoff run. right?
Yeah. So when I was saying there's no tickets to Game 7, there is, but they're very, and like you just said, like that $13,000 pair, if you go 2 sections over to 104, the highest one there is like $7,000. So obviously, like this is StubHub. Some of these are resale tickets.
Right.
The tickets have been set, right?
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to think for the most part, like this doesn't matter. Rogers Place is going to be packed to the rafters on Game 7. And I'm scared that a lot of people are going to get scammed, like, into thinking.
I'm glad you're mentioning it.
Because they already have. So
it has happened.
It's going to happen for Game 7 for
Yeah,
sure. So
I would
just
say
go to
that-
other sites, like you said.
Yeah.
Get a feel for what tickets cost before you go getting like the deal of the century, you think, right?
100%. You remember back in the day, the actual, like, I don't think you're allowed to call them scalpers anymore, but the ticket resellers that would
They're
hang
outside.
hanging outside,
Right out front.
and Oilers
They're
fans
screaming,
like,
tickets, you got tickets.
they had their whole they had their kind of like legend. They were always characters, and you'd always recognize them. You'd always know where to find them. I remember there was a guy who grew up in Calgary, as you know, outside the Saddle Dome. We just called him Bronk because I don't even know what his real name was, but he always had a Denver Broncos coat on, a Denver Broncos jacket, and a big ponytail. And this guy would always have tickets, and it was like there was like the beauty of the old school transaction where you actually had, Johnny, like this long strips of like physical paper tickets, and everybody's paying cash. This was back when it was just like such a more analog experience, but it used to be so much fun. We'd go down there, high school students, university students, you'd be, and you'd sort of like, this is where you learn to bargain. This is where you learn to negotiate with Bronk. And we'd sort of hold strong and I'd be like, and back in the day, man, we're getting into games, you'd always wait till the anthem started, or you wait till the puck drops and you go, I got $20, I got $30, and you'd get up into the second deck. But those were the good old days, man.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Les wants to know if you get into the games for free.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I have to get into the building to go up to the balcony. So yeah, I have a pass. Which,
you guys are going to have a good time tonight.
What, tonight?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, don't you think?
Well, it's not a home game. So
no, I know,
yeah,
but the
yes.
moss pit and everything going on.
Well,
in
also,
downtown.
like, it is technically, if this doesn't go our way, it's the last game of the season. So we're going to be in high spirits no matter what happens. I mean, I know a loss tonight to the city of Edmonton is like a big downer because we live and breathe hockey here. But you can't help but not be proud of a team that makes it all the way to the very bitter end of the Stanley Cup Finals in this day and age, 2 years in a row, whether it's the Panthers or the Oilers, but especially the Oilers. And, last year they were banged up. This year they almost made it through. And then, Hyman, I just noticed, I look at Nuge, he's a little slower out there. I don't know what he's still dealing with, but I mean, they're fighting adversity. And if you know the Oilers, that's when they play the best. When they're down 3-1.
I agree.
When there's 6 minutes left and it's tied. When a couple guys are banged up. But I do think for the most part, they are healthy. So I still believe they can do this. And how can you not believe in McJesus? Because he pulls things out of his ass just out of nowhere. This guy dazzles the mind. And I believe that the last interview we saw with him, he's unusually calm.
Yeah.
He's always unusually calm, but he's like...
There's something...
They asked him, like,
different this year.
anxiety, stress, and he's like... It's unbelievable to be here.
Yeah.
Stanley Cup's in the building. Who wouldn't want to be playing when it's in the he's laser pointed. So I have a feeling Oilers are going to do it tonight. I have no idea what will happen in Game 7. I think it'll be bedlam here in Edmonton, but I think Oilers are going to win tonight.
I agree with you. Mark it. But if you bet on it and lose, don't come back to us.
That's why Game 7 will be so scary though, because once I believe 99.9% we're going to get to 7, but I have no idea what's going to happen in that game. Look what happened last year. We were so jacked for Game 7, and then it was like a snoozer.
Yeah.
It was 2-1.
Yeah.
It was,
I know. Still not over it. Ready for this one. So as we wrap Real Talkers, again, we put the ball in your court. We're so grateful that you spend time with us each and every morning. And when we tell you, we want to know how you feel about what we're hearing. We mean it. For parents in your life, for those that are paying close attention to this teacher's strike or maybe should be paying closer attention, thanks in advance for sharing the link to this episode with them. Thanks for liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. That really goes a long way. And thanks again for supporting our sponsors that make all of this possible. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.